Mai te pai maunga zai, mai te awa tonga, ki te awa. Te nei te hapi ai, whānau, haere mai te toki, homi ui ki e. Kia ora. I'd like to ask if we have any apologies to make us through.
Councillor Williams.
You have an apology from Councillor Williams. I'd like to move that apology be accepted. Williams, someone second it, please. Councillor Della, all in favour? Vote against. Motion is carried. Councillor Williams's apologies are accepted. Conflicts of interest declaration. Are there any conflicts of interest to be declared? Be none. Please note. So, public forum. We have no public forum notified. We are here for discussion. Moving straight on. Youth Council views. We have nothing from Youth Council. You're sorry?
It's just me though.
Oh, hello. Please come to the table. Thank you, Glenda. I know I was there last night.
I'm a young person, but we did the Youth Council meeting last night, and as Ron alluded to, he came along and spoke to the Youth Council about local water done well and gave a really great overview. After he left, they went into deliberations and came out with some feedback that they wanted me to share today. So it says the Youth Council are in support of the Y+T model. They would like to see that the wider community of the Wairarapa and Tararua are considered, and that this model does that. Sorry. They noted that this is a fundamental life-changing decision and it will have generational impacts. In 10 to 20 years' time, when the Youth Council are buying houses and raising families, they want to ensure that the costs are minimal, but that they're also that the services are also readily available to them. They noted that this model would see financial management at a corporate level, and councils would remain shareholders. They also noted that CDC is in the middle of the model, and CDC's decision will impact the continuation if they choose to go alone. Thank you.
Darren, you can start. Sorry. Got a job. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes. I take it that the minutes. We don't have minutes. We don't have minutes. No, sorry, it's great. Okay, 8.1 hearings. So today, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along. We have a number of people appearing before us now. I take it you all understand the rules around hearings and how they're conducted, so I won't dwell on that. So first one up, if I'd like to call on submission number 12, Amber Craig, Tina Tapu, Rangatani or Wairarapa. Kia ora. Okay. You know we have our whananga, Joel from Kura Pitia online.
It's on the screen. Yeah.
Mai arara te maunga o rangi tūmone I tū nei. Mai arara te awa o roa mahanga e tiri nei. Mai arara whakamaua ki au tina. Tina te pū, tina te aka. Tina ta mori e Hawaii ki. Kia kotahi ko te kāhui ariki. Kia kotahi ko te kāhui tipua. Kia kotahi ko nā uri o rangita nei tau nei. Haumi e, hui e, tae ki e. Nā mihi nui ki a papa tuanuku, tēnā koe. Nā mihi nui ki nā mana whenua o tēnei rohi, ko rangitāne, raua ko kahanonu, tēnā kōrua. Nā mihi nui ki te maha o nā hapu o tēnei whenua, tēnā koutou katoa. Nā mihi nui ki nā kai whakahaere mo tēnei kaupapa e tēnei rā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Amber Craig taku ingoa, he paurau taki whenua ahau ki te rangitāne o Wairarapa Incorporated, Hurio no konei. He whakapapa mō te wai. Ka moi a rangi nui I a papa tuanuku ka puta ka tāne. Ka moi a tānei I a hini tūpari maunga ka puta ka parawhenua mea. Kia mau kia parawhenua mea. In te ao Māori, our wai is a taonga. Our atua Rangi nui, papa tuanuku, tāne, he ni tūpari maunga, parawhenua mea, and many more all tell the story of our taiao, our environment, and how it is interconnected. The holistic nature of our environment's ecosystem. We whakapapa to our atua, to parawhenua mea, our source of our waterways, as she descends down through hini tūpari maunga, our cliffs, ranges, and mountains. These atua guide us in the natural world, and our kaupapa is about upholding and supporting them all. We start from them and work to where they guide us. Solutions such as whale oil to hear kauri dieback being a perfect example. This would seem like a disconnected solution until you look at our whakapapa. At Papua in the late 1850s, Juanita Whatuhura Jury, alongside Aporo Te Kumiroa, began documenting one of the most prolific manuscripts of our practices today. 3 tohunga were recorded. They were Moihi Te Māturahanga, Paratini Te Okawhare, and Nepia Pōhuhu. It was innovative for their time, and because it was our people who did it, there was no other person writing our views down without context. People such as Wiramu Hikawera Mahupuku, Tāwhiri Mātia, Tāwhao Ngātuiri, Taiawhio, Tika Winga Te Tau, and many more tupuna wrote their own manuscripts in addition to the waiata, motiatia, pūrākau that have been passed down through the generations. We have many taonga sitting within whānau that inform us of mātauranga Māori as mana whenua and as kaitiaki. We know from this mātauranga that parawhenua mea is the mokopuna of Papa Tuanuku, and for us in the Wairarapa is one of our atua of wai. We know that te huri hanga of wai is the process of how our water cycles through our atmosphere, our wai, our world. We know that for multiple generations, and science calls this hydrologic cycle. We have names for all the wai in the cycle of that process. We have names for all the types of oni, the dirt. We have names for all the types of wind we face, for clouds, for kohatu. We even have names for tūtai, our bio-waste, which is tapu. We have a whakapapa for everything, and with that comes pūrākau. Our ancestors were the masters of observation. We observed taiao. We passed on this knowledge orally, thousands of years of observations that we still use today. Our atua, our whakapapa, and our pūrākau tell us how this works. It is our job as kaitiaki of this mātauranga Māori and of our wai to interpret this knowledge, contextually apply it, and adapt it with advancements of today, such as technology. That is our role as kaitiaki. But to have this conversation, we also need to understand the concepts of tapu and noa. For the purposes of today, I will keep this very simple because you could write a whole thesis on the concept of this. The word tapu is often translated as sacred. However, other words such as prohibited, forbidden, special, not ordinary, and to be set apart convey a context of what the meaning of tapu is. Noa can be described as freedom from restriction, that's something may be ordinary or safe. Tapu and noa are intrinsically linked. Everything can possess tapu, and we can move between tapu and noa. And we've been given the tools and concepts from our mātauranga Māori to do so. But to break tapu is a hara, a violation. Our district councils in the past 180 plus years have broken tapu many times. This has been by allowing, consciously or unconsciously, bio-waste into our waterways, destroying the mauri of our wai, of our atua, and of our tinana for those that eat our kaimoana, collect kai within our waterways. If you want to read some further reading on this, the Centre for Integrated Bio-Waste Research at Scion has produced a great paper called From Tapu to Noa, Multicultural Views on Bio-Waste Management, a focus on biosolids with 7 great authors. In Wairarapa, we have our own stories about how we dealt with bio-waste. We also know that large infrastructure projects with massive installation costs accumulate massive maintenance costs and end up costing us more when they fail. We also know they make our communities and our hapu and our whānau weak. They remove our resilience within a world that is experiencing mass climate change events. And trust me, the only constant is that they will fail in some way. We know because we've been there holding the fort along with our communities when each of these projects have gone wrong across the rohi of Wairarapa. We have been passed on stories from our kaumātua as warnings of lessons never to repeat. We're in our communities every day as well, working with them, because we and our future generations will bear the brunt of the impact decisions made today. So what do we need? To go back to community, whānau and hapu. We need hapu and community responses to our bio-waste. We need to sit down with science and te ao Māori, mātauranga Māori, to look at how we deal with the waste we are producing and manageable solutions. We need to be brave and we need to be innovative. A quick example, by looking at the solutions that reduce water use in our toilets, showers and baths, we can reduce our water waste for whare by 65%. An incinerator toilet after a week of 2 people would dispense a cup of ash. 35% of our average water use for our whare in New Zealand is flushing toilets. When we look at this through a te ao Māori lens, ahi or fire can remove tapu. Burning poo rather than plastics would be healthier for us all and ensure we're not utilising precious whenua to deal with our waste. For our organisations that require water, looking at natural water flows across land and utilising native restoration techniques to help guide our water to places where it's needed most, ensuring we work with the whenua and not against her. We've listened to our whānau voices. We don't need more strategic and executive committees to get the work done. Utilising things like Auckland have recently done their first citizens' assembly with water care. It's a concept that dates back to the ancient Athens 2,500 years ago. More closer to home, Rangitani o Wairarapa has been leading a co-design process with Greater Wellington, where we've brought councils, ministries, community and experts to the table all at the beginning to co-plan, co-design, co-deliver and co-manage. This has actually delivered benefit outcomes to this rohi, to the mangatariri, ensuring we work on solutions as a whole that will reduce the flooding to Carterton, reduce the erosion of land for our communities, but allowing our awa the space to move and naturally helping her to move back to her path when needed. The same solution in Masterton will not be the same for Carterton, Greytown, Pirinoa, Tora. We need to take information and contextually apply our mātauranga and our science, communities' lived experience, and mātauranga Māori forward. Local water done well cannot happen without us as tangata whenua. Local water done well cannot be done without our communities. Local water done well can be nimble, agile, innovative, and provide better solutions for our atua, our mokopuna to come, because the less mess we leave this environment in, the more our mokopuna can thrive. Kia mau kia para whenua mea, kia mau ki ngā tangata o te whenua, kia mau ki ngā mana whenua, kia mau ki ngā tangata tiriti, kia mau ki ngā rangatira apopo, ngā mokopuna o roa au. Kotahi tērā, whakakotahi kia mau, whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ka uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E kia ana te atukura, he teo, he huka, he hauhu, te hei Māori ora.
Thank you, Amber. We got 1 minute left to go. Any questions from Joel or any of the council panel? No, just want you to know that your submission is here and you can take it. We have all read it.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Amber. Thank you. Thank you. Kia ora. Can I call Holger Jensen? How are you? Would you like to, and I'll just start by reaffirming that you have 10 minutes and you'll get a nod at 7 minutes, and we don't have a bell, but you'll get a nod. And if you can leave us a little bit of time for questions, that would be very good. That's right, just you can take it. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Holger. I'm living here in Carterton now for 4 years, and my background is audit, assurance, and risk, and that's basically the lens that I put on this document. And I have 2 basically main problems or issues with the preferred proposal option 1. I would like to challenge a little bit the assumptions. I also would like to alert you to some risks that I see. You're probably aware of, but I think still good to discuss them. First of all, the assumptions. When I look at this document, I think main 2 assumptions are efficiency and cost reduction. And I thought to myself, if I would have $1 for every time I heard this link to a government project or a change proposal, I probably wouldn't have to worry about my mortgage anymore. The reality is, happens. And we have very good examples for this. We just have to look at Health New Zealand at the moment, or my favorite, the school lunch project, where they thought about cost reductions and flying in now school lunches from Australia. And there are others like Nova Pay and other projects that come into mind. I also think that the prediction of price for water for an average household, not even knowing what an average household might look like in 20 years, is a stretch. I wouldn't even feel comfortable to predict the price of butter in the next 20 years. And I also thought when I looked at the numbers, if you just skim through this document, you could think that actually the rates would go down. But that's not really the statement. The statement is that the cost of water in a best case scenario might be reduced. But that doesn't mean that the rates go down, because as you pointed out, we do have stranded overhead cost that someone has to pay for, which I assume is us. And on top of that, wait, there's more. We also have the overhead cost that we have to pay for at the new founded CCO. So we're paying basically twice for overhead costs. And I personally, looking at my rates, would rather see the money invested in infrastructure than used for administrative overhead costs. Then I also would like to just basically alert you to some risks. And I'm not sure, I handed in a PowerPoint presentation. Is that on the screen? It's good. And basically, I'm a little bit a nerd. So I went through 4 financial statements and looked at 2 numbers, the infrastructure assets, and compared them with the water system assets. Because there was a statement that the regions are similar, and we might have a similar climate, and we are next door. But you look at the infrastructure priorities, and you can see that Carterton did a really good job. Carterton basically spent 30 cents of every dollar they invested into water infrastructure. And you can see there is a difference. So Tararua, for example, had different priorities, and I'm not judging here. It's just they spent a lot less on water infrastructure. And I just imagined if we would sit together and we would be an executive leadership team at the new CCO, where would we invest in the next 5 to 10 years if we have to develop an investment plan? Would we invest in the region that already has the probably best infrastructure in place, or would we try to close the gap between those that haven't had the same priority settings in the past? And that is just a risk that I wanted to alert you to. We might have a disadvantage when it comes to investment priorities, and they will have resource limitations, so they have to make a call where to invest and where to basically put the maintenance crew to maintain the assets. Also, there is a risk of cross-subsidization, basically, when you look at this. At the end of the day, with cross-subsidy, I mean that you can avoid it if you have a very good cost coding system in place, but if not, then you basically have to probably just divide the maintenance cost and overhead costs by 4, and everybody has their share. And I think the last and probably biggest risk for me, and that was already identified, is shared debt. So I'm not really clear how that will work, but I just imagine that you have an infrastructure project, infrastructure investment in Masterton for a wastewater treatment plant, and it costs you 20 million. And at the end of the day, the decision is made that the CCO has to finance it, takes on a loan. That means that we have a share of that loan, a shared liability on the interest payments and principal payments. And the risk is that by basically having infrastructure projects that are financed against loan, who is in control of the budget? Why would I stick within the budget if I don't have the accountability and responsibility for the debt? The debt is not even in my financial statement. It goes into a financial statement outside of the council. And I think that is a risk. Not even the European Union made that experiment and shared debt. So I thought it is certainly a risk that can be managed, but I thought it's certainly something that I wanted to alert you to. So to sum it up, we will give away $70 million in infrastructure assets. We have the risk of shared debt. We are losing the power to make decisions for Carterton and or set priorities for Carterton. There is a risk of cross-subsidizing other regions, and we may disadvantage due to our advanced infrastructure in the next 5 to 10 year investment plan. And for what? for the hope of reduced water cost in 20 years, not rates, just water cost, and maybe a miracle of self-efficiencies. And I don't really want to sound like a Trumpy here. And you can see I don't have the baseball cap, make Carterton great again. I actually believe Carterton is great. And I'm not saying Carterton first, but when it comes to ratepayer money, I actually believe in Carterton only. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any questions on the panel?
I just,
Sorry, Brian.
sorry, just one question. Is there any chance that we could share your presentation figures?
Yeah, that's,
And could you email them through
yeah,
to Rob?
as an exit version.
Your PowerPoint.
Okay, PowerPoint.
Speaking notes.
Yeah, I can do that.
And your speaking notes?
Yeah.
So if you could
Okay.
give us those as well. Thank
Thank you.
That would be very useful.
Yeah, okay, no problem.
Are there any other? Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Most of the risks around this that you've talked about, we've talked about as well.
Yeah, I can imagine.
If we can find a way to mitigate the risk to Carterton ratepayers and particularly water users in terms of costs, debt and access to investment in our infrastructure, would that make you a bit more cheerful?
Yes,
Really cheerful.
well, it is, when we're looking at the other kind of project that's coming to mind, you can, but you need this in writing. It has to be controlled. These are risks that should sit in a risk register at the Carterton Council, and they have to be managed. And let's look at that risk in general terms. You can either live with it, you can avoid it. That would be easy. Just take option 2. Or you have to mitigate basically the risk. And the risk when it comes to cross-subsidizing would be mitigated with a very good cost coding system at the CCO. So if you have a maintenance crew out in the morning in Carterton, in the afternoon in the South Wairarapa, you have to allocate those costs directly to those regions. It's doable, but it's certainly it's a little bit of work. And with the debt, I think it's your call. Why should the CCO basically have the permission to take on a loan? This could be financed if it's a wastewater treatment plant in the Wairarapa, in Masterton. It could be financed by Masterton District Council. And if they have to do it, of course, try to stay within the budget, because it would be a direct impact on their financial statement if they basically go from essentials to nice to have to wonderful and luxury to have, because hey, it's not their money. It's like Dire Straits, money for nothing. It's something we have to be careful about, because there is the temptation to do it if you do not own the debt. And I think the risk for me with shared debt is that once it starts and the first project is basically blown out of proportion, maybe they say, Master, you can't do it. But once they've done it, the next project is maybe in Carterton. So if they could do it, why can't we do it? And then I think it triggers a kind of a domino impact, effect that basically every project is just basically just nice to have and blown out of proportion because you don't own the debt. You just have a shared debt responsibility, which means on paper, there's none. So if the CCO comes into financial problems, yes, that would be an issue for Carterton. But what happens in this kind of weird scenario if Masterton can't pay interest rates anymore for a loan, which is shared? You guys have the liability and you have to cover that up. And I think this is the risk that I would try to avoid, because it will be hard to mitigate. So if you have a contract in place which basically states, yes, the CCO can do whatever they have to do, but they cannot take on debt, then every region has to finance their infrastructure projects themselves. And that would be something to consider, I guess. Yeah, it's just the
Message heard. John, are there any questions? Just looking back now, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So any other questions?
You got on the presentation?
Yeah, why not? I just thought, yes, it was just about the efficiency. And I thought, okay, if it's so efficient to basically put all the water infrastructure assets into one basket, why do we actually need and that's a provocative question, separate district councils. Why don't we have one council for the entire Wairarapa? I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying if we believe in efficiency, that would be the maybe next step. I don't know, yeah. But I think, yeah, you heard my opinion. It wouldn't be my preferred option.
They are good points, well made, and I can assure you that the panel is listening. Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? I think you mean about how Tararua, if you look at it on a map, you realise that 98% of their infrastructure assets are roads.
Yes.
Yeah. About 10 times the size of Carterton.
Yeah.
So I just,
Yeah, no, it's just, and that's why I basically just looked at and of course they had different investments. I just thought it also is a decision set on priorities. And when we look at Wellington, that is not here in this kind of comparison, they have never really probably spent enough money on their water infrastructure. That's why they have water fountains on every corner. So I guess this is a little bit, it's related to needs, of course, but also the priority. You can only spend the dollar once. And I think that's something Carterton very well in the past. So I do understand why other regions might want this kind of shared solution. But for Carterton, we actually have something to lose here. I think that is something to consider.
Thank you very much. And thank you for taking that to actually physically come in person to present. Thank you very much. Are we
Need to move to Eric.
Erica here? It's online? Oh, right.
Yep.
Right, thank you. So, Erica.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kei te
We can-
piha koe, or
Yeah, very
koutou,
good.
I should say.
Lovely. So, look, can I start by saying that you can take it that your submission have been read, and I know everyone's been very diligent on this one. So you have 10 minutes. Alec, you'll get a nod. It leaves a little bit of time for questions. That'd be wonderful. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for receiving and reading our initial submission. This is supplementary to that. Firstly, Sustainable Wairarapa Incorporated would like to thank or congratulate the Carterton District Council on their to date good work with water, because in terms of the full council, it seems like you have done the best job on your own without going into a CCO. However, if it's okay, I'll just read from my notes from here on in. Sustainable Wairarapa has read each of the 4 consultation documents. Each has revealed different information. For communities to actually understand the complexity of local proposal and make an informed decision, it's important that all 4 councils produce one set of metrics that can be directly compared. The creation of the Tararua Wairarapa CCO will be one of the most complex local water done well operations in the country, with a mix of communities from very small, such as Castle Point and Ngawi, through to Marsden, a town with approximately 30,000 people. The operation will also manage water for manufacturing, some primary production, and the solar farms that are going up across the region. Each of these many installations has operating idiosyncrasies, which will make it costly to integrate into a single entity and maintain in the future, potentially limiting the ability to reach the economies of scale required to financially benefit the water users within the proposed CCO. The CCO will be funded by a low population base that is also the poorest in the Wellington region. From this perspective, are the councils confident that the financial forecast for the proposed CCO will attract and hold on to appropriately qualified and experienced staff and fund the different and varied operations? Is there enough scale to separate ourselves from Wellington in a manner that has suitable staff to manage, plan and implement a CCO? On that point, the discussion is around the fact that Wellington definitely has the appropriate qualified people, and becoming a CCO might limit our access to appropriately qualified people. Is there enough scale to separate ourselves from Wellington in a manner that has, we did that bit. Only South Wairarapa District Council has identified the level of debt that it will be transferring to the proposed Tararua Wairarapa CCO. This raises two further questions. One, how much debt will the other councils be transferring to the new entity? And how much debt will the new entity be carrying before it even starts work? The New Zealand government has stated clearly that these CCOs are its preferred model for local water done well. How is the New Zealand government supporting the proposed entity to make it financially viable? Speaking plainly, what money is the New Zealand government contributing to get this entity off the ground, and what conditions come with any financial support? In separating water debt from the rest of the individual council's operations, all councils have identified that this will allow the proposed CCO to increase their debt to 500 times their operating revenue, a level of debt that has little chance of ever being paid back, forcing the CCO's customers to servicing the interest through their water invoices. Considering again that Wairarapa has a small population with low-income residents, where is the social equity in invoicing these people for interest on corporate debt? Separating water debt from the rest of the individual council's operations will also reduce the council's debt initially. But as pointed out by South Wairarapa District Council's consultation document, this provides the opportunity to borrow for other council operations, ultimately keeping their debt levels the same or even increasing them. This doubling down on debt for operations will increase rates by double billing. While all four councils show on a graph that the projected rates with the CCO will be lower than maintaining the status quo, Sustainable Wairarapa is suspicious of the accuracy of these figures. The only way that ratepayers will know is when we receive our first invoice. Sustainable Wairarapa is concerned that the environment has not featured in the proposals for the new structure. The local water done well operation has the potential to have a profound effect on the local and regional environment, and any new entity should be working to improve the current situation. For example, where consent extensions allow the discharge of wastewater into rivers beyond publicly and environmentally acceptable quantities. But who will be measuring the environmental impact and change? Where do water races fit into the new structure? Where do aquifers fit into the new structure? It is deeply concerning that aquifers are being touted as new water when these are water stores that should be restricted in their use. Where does the potential dam, pond, reservoir for agricultural water storage fit into a new structure? How will individuals' councils work with the proposed CCO? An example of this question can be found in wastewater operations. As oxidation ponds fill with sludge, whose responsibility would it be to resolve that issue? The water would be the CCO's, but who owns the sludge? Who owns the solution to the sludge? For example, a biogas fermenter, such as Waste Care in Auckland has. The proposal documents focus little on the makeup of the CCO board. Are the four councils willing to bring in outside expertise to develop the structure to deliver on a complex operation? Sustainable Wairarapa does not support the use of consultants and contractors, as have been the practice with Wellington Water. Sustainable Wairarapa desires an efficient, professional water authority without the petty local patch politics that have plagued the Wairarapa for decades, point scoring rather than give and take. In summary, Sustainable Wairarapa Incorporated supports the Tararua Wairarapa CCO in principle, but there is not enough information about the current proposal to make an informed decision for a new, highly complex entity, financially and structurally. How can we as a community develop the trust that the CCO will deliver with too little information? If Sustainable Wairarapa and the populace of our communities knew the principles the CCO was being built on, we would be better able to support or decline specific parts of the proposal. Our hope in supporting the principle of the CCO is that it will be less bureaucratic and more consultative. The CCO should deliver better and cheaper water services than the current council operations. Moving forward, for Sustainable Wairarapa to convert our in-principle support to confirmed support, our membership needs a complete set of information from each authority that is directly comparable. This will include, but is not limited to, the transferable debt on water operations, leakage, and current consent information. The potential structure of the CCO from board through to operation level. Relatively accurate future operational costs of the CCO. A working party that represents all 4 councils, iwi and environmental watchdogs, should sit down and work to understand the scale of the issue, solutions, and whether the ability to borrow 500 times the operational revenue will be sufficient to implement the solutions. If it is not, then the New Zealand government should be approached to provide sufficient funding to ensure the successful transition of water services to the proposed CCO. The upfront benefits of a CCO to communities, regardless of New Zealand government push for a CCO, what is the benefit that will pull a low-income region in? Borrowing and economies of scale have been mentioned, but will the service be demonstrably better than our current offering, and who will measure this proposed improvement? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Are there any questions? Councillor Cherry Campbell, thank you.
Kia ora, Erica, thank you. Just a question on your submission, and thank you for your presentation this morning. Has the submission been approved by the board or of Sustainable Wairarapa?
Yes.
It has, so it was signed off in a board meeting?
In a executive meeting, yes.
Thank you.
No problem.
Are there any other questions?
Joel.
Yeah. Joel, yes, please. Joel, thank you.
Through you, mate. Kia ora, Erica. Joel Nātu re Ngā Te Kaukurawatia. I picked up your part about the water races and the other parts, and there's a number of consents that are coming up or due to come up. Would the position of Sustainable Wairarapa be that consent should be put on hold until this is finalised, or that they should carry on?
That's actually a tough question for me to answer. The reality is that any water that is potentially impacting our rivers, our streams, so that would be water coming through water races. So we know that that water becomes less clean as it goes through the farmland. We know that, for example, the extended consenting on release of wastewater into the Ruamahanga River by Marsden District Council is, in our opinion, unacceptable. What Sustainable Wairarapa has argued for longer than I've even been with Sustainable Wairarapa is that wastewater should not be going into the rivers. So our position on whether to hold or renew would depend on what consent it is and what the renewal of a consent would entail. So if it's just a rolling over of, we'd probably would expect the councils or the CCO, if it is transferred to the CCO, to do their due diligence and say, is this good for the water? Is this good for the Ruamahanga River ultimately, because that's where all the water is going to end up? Is this good for the Wairarapa Moana, because ultimately that's where all the water ends up? And so it would be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, cheers for that. I caught what you said there. I guess it's for me, I'm thinking about with these consents, if they're already if they end up being reconsented, for say 35 years, then the CCO, and then that gets passed on the CCO. They then take on that responsibility as opposed to having a view on it beforehand.
Sorry, can you rephrase your question?
So I guess the Moroa race one is coming up. That's one that I know that's coming up. Would your preference be that South Wairarapa District Council and Greater Wellington go through the consenting process to get that reconsented? And then if that does get reconsented and then passed on to the CCO, and then the CCO takes on what all of the, I guess, consenting conditions for whatever that duration be, say 35 years. Is the position of Sustainable Wairarapa at the moment be that, well, that's just what's going to happen? Or would the preference be that consents like that be put on pause so that the CCO can then have a role and a say in any consenting proposals or conditions?
All right. It's sort of a double-edged sword there, because let's look at the CCO for a minute. It would probably take a minimum of 3 years for them to be actually running and in any kind of capacity to be able to apply for consents, because they need to sort out their structure. So in something that's immediately coming up like that water race, it would be better that the district council applies. But in applying for a reconsenting of a water race, Sustainable Wairarapa's position is that the environment must be top of mind when consents like that are delivered. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think probably it is worth noting that just to clarify, I mean, there's a lot of questions in there, Erica, and I don't, we're not in a position to go through them blow by blow, but I think a lot of the information you seek is out there in our documents, but water races are not included in this proposal. They are owned by the water race owners, and they have a governance entity that governs how those are managed. The water races are managed. Their consent is their consent. Okay. So look, any other questions from anyone? Thank you. Look, thank you very much. It was a lengthy submission and a good submission. Really appreciate you taking the time, one, to put it together, Sustainable Wairarapa putting it together, and secondly, you'll be there to speak to us directly.
Thank you. I have sent through a copy of this morning, so you can all look at it later. But I do want to end with a headline that was in the Taranaki Times Age that was around their proposed CCO, and it was about corporatisation by surrender was the title. So if you have the opportunity to read that article, it's a very good one about the two smaller district councils having to cede to the larger district council and giving up 30% of their revenue.
Yeah, I think I can speak for this council. I'm quite proud of that. This council quite strong. We may be small, but we have we're very strong in our position of what we've done. Very proud of what we've done to this point. Understand that the legislation is the legislation, and it's about picking one or the other and moving forward. So there will be a lot of your questions will be dealt with by the team as we negotiate our way through the next phase. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you very much. Okay, so is Geraldine? No, not here.
Have you come to present?
Michael Hewson and Hancock. No, not here.
Michael Hewson's not till 11.
Not till 11. I thought some might come in early. So we have you had any contact from Geraldine at all, Robin? Okay,
It's probably in my emails, but I think.
well, the time is, we're overdue for smoko, so.
Yeah.
So let's take a break and back at 11. Well, if Michael's here.